Thank you, Father, for being a very present help in times of trouble. Thank you that the Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. Thank you that you are with us always, even to the ends of the world. Thank you so much. We praise you for the life and the strength that comes from your word and your promises. Father in heaven, we're going to be looking today at things in history, things currently going on. We praise you for the spirit of prophecy that sheds light into the darkness of the last days of Earth's history. We just pray for wisdom. We pray for clear minds to understand what we're looking at today and to understand our responsibility today. Bless us to that end. In Jesus' name, amen. This is Behind the Door, part 44. One note I want to make very clear. Sometimes in studying events, we have to mention people's names. It's very, I want everybody to understand, when we talk about individuals, it's not for the purpose of digging up things in people's lives. It's not about people. It's not about people's personal lives. When we talked about the President of the United States from 1992 to 2000, William Jefferson Clinton, in talking about him, folk, never did we get into personal problems of individuals. The issue is liberty. It's civil and religious liberty. That is the whole issue behind the Behind the Door series, is to analyze history, current events, in the light of the war that has raged for centuries over civil and religious freedom. That's the issue. And so this afternoon, as we look at this one called The Man Called President, we're looking at this strictly and solely for the intent as to how it comes together on civil and religious liberty in the light of end-time Bible prophecy. Now we know very, very clearly, or we should know very, very clearly, that Revelation 13 verse 11 talks about a world power that would rise up, that would have two horns like a lamb. It would espouse a republican form of government, which would include a constitution, a Bill of Rights, which would also demand the separation of the church and the state. This world power in Revelation 13:11 not only would espouse republicanism, but it would also espouse Protestantism. It would espouse the right of every man and woman to worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience. And so that second beast or world power, Revelation 13 and verse 11, can only be the United States of America. Now it says in verse 12 that the United States of America would exercise all the power of the first beast before him. And that first beast in Revelation 13, 1 to 10, talks about another world power that rose up in the old world, and it had principles of government that were dragon-like. Because in Revelation 13:2 it says, "And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. He had the feet of a bear, the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and great authority." The dragon in Bible prophecy is the devil. So the devil and a devil-style government was utilized with the first beast, or the first power. The first power commits blasphemy. Revelation 13:1 tells us that. We know from the scriptures in Mark 2 and in John 10 that blasphemy is claiming to have power to forgive sins, and it's claiming to be God on earth. So this first power of Revelation 13 can only be the Roman Catholic Church system. So we see in Revelation 13:12 then that the United States of America would exercise all the power that Rome manifests through the Dark Ages, and that America would cause the world, or the earth, and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So we recognize that America would set up oppressive religious laws towards the end of Earth's history, and would demand obedience from all the inhabitants of the world, just as Rome had done through the Dark Ages. And I want to look at a few situations, a few people, and some events that have transpired towards the United States of America, speaking as a dragon and bringing about oppressive religious laws, Sunday laws, just as Rome did through the Dark Ages, the Roman Catholic Church system. Once again, the title Behind the Door, Part 44, The Man Called President. I want you to listen real carefully. Point number 1. The new leader of the free world who promised a new world order did not win in his first attempt at the highest position. He did not win it by democratic means. He was appointed to the office after he failed to win the presidency with a majority of votes. Point number 2. He did have the backing of banks, industrialists, and corporations. His connection to an ultra-elite secret society didn't hurt any either. Point number 3. The very year that he took office, the nation was struck by terrorists. Well, it was blamed by terrorists. One of the nation's most recognizable symbols, a towering, majestic building, burned and then crashed to the ground. Point number 4. The leader declared that it was a well-laid terrorist plot and that the perpetrators would be brought to justice. Point number 5. The nation was not told that the people in charge of the investigation deleted critical information and rewrote investigative reports. The ones in charge of the investigation did so to protect and cover up government involvement in this terrible act. Point number 6. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the people were warned that the nation was in danger, that freedom itself was under assault, and that terrorists were seeking to destroy it. Point number 7. Associates of the terrorists were rounded up and jailed without charge. Those who were suspicious were rounded up without charge, denied legal counsel, and many were never seen from again. Point number 8. The leader demanded that civil service laws be altered to give him power to hire only those of his choosing and to fire those who displeased him. This was necessary to protect the nation from terrorism. Point number 9. The leader demanded the burning of books that opposed his regime. Number 10. The leader ushered in a program which encouraged mail carriers, utility workers, and other government employees to spy on private citizens and report any suspicious behavior. And number 11. As a result of the quote-unquote terrorist attack, constitutional liberties were gutted in the aftermath of the tragedy. Now, if I were to ask you this afternoon, who and what am I talking about, I would probably get one answer. Thank you, David. Actually, the points that were just stated are referring to two people. Two people. It's referring first to a man back in 1933, and then it's referring to another man in 2001. The man in 1933 was Adolf Hitler of Germany. The man in 2001 was George Bush of the United States of America. Point number 1, the new leader of the free world who promised a new world order did not win his initial election by democratic means. He was appointed after he failed to win the presidency with a majority of votes. From the book called America Betrayed by Dr. R. Joseph, he states on page 21 of his book, on January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by Paul von Hindenburg. Hitler, in the two previous elections, had failed to obtain a majority of the votes to become president. George Bush, in the disputed 2000 presidential election, on December 12th of 2000, by the United States Supreme Court, ruled that George Bush should be president. Justin Antonin Scalia argued that a recount would threaten irreparable harm to George Bush by casting a cloud upon what he claims to be the legitimacy of his election. By ruling in favor of George Bush, the Supreme Court effectively ruled him the winner of the 2000 elections, even though George Bush had lost the popular vote. Thus, it could be said that by taking the side of Bush and by making an unmistakable partisan decision, that George Bush was actually appointed into the White House. Point number 2, he did have the backing of banks, industrialists, and corporations. His connection to an ultra-elite secret society didn't hurt either. What many people don't know is that Adolf Hitler was a part of a German secret society called the Brotherhood of Death, or the Thule Death Society. That society was connected to another secret organization in Germany called the Illuminati. And it's very, very clear that the Illuminati was established by Adam Weishaupt May 1st, 1776, and that Adam Weishaupt was a tool of the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church. Now, I had a lady write to me from England this week saying that Bill Hughes' book on the enemy unmasked is good, but he is totally wrong in claiming that Adam Weishaupt was connected to the Jesuits. Folk, the ready argument is this: Adam Weishaupt was raised and educated by the Jesuit order. Adam Weishaupt, when he created the Illuminati in 1776, was doing this. He was teaching at a Jesuit university called Ingolstadt University in the most powerful Jesuit area of Germany called Bavaria, and he was teaching at that Jesuit university Roman Catholic canon law. Now, knowing all of those factors, to say that Adam Weishaupt was not connected to the Jesuits would be like saying that Kellogg's Corn Flakes are not connected to Kellogg's. Adolf Hitler, through the Brotherhood of Death or the Thule Death Society, connected to the Illuminati and then back to the Jesuit order. Adolf Hitler did the bidding of his masters in Germany and through World War II. The same people that controlled and guided Adolf Hitler are the exact same masterminds that control the President of the United States. George Bush went to Yale University, was a part of the Order of Skull and Bones, initiated into that in 1968. Skull and Bones was established way back in 1832 by William Huntington Russell, who had gone to Germany and in meetings with the Illuminati there, came back to America to form their chapter at Yale University. And it was called Skull and Bones. The same people that controlled Adolf Hitler controlled George Bush today. And their connection to those secret societies that go right back to the doorstep of the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church, the same people that controlled Hitler control George Bush. Point number 3, the very year that he took office, the nation was struck by terrorists. Well, it was blamed on terrorists. One of the nation's most recognizable symbols, a towering, majestic building, burned and then crashed to the ground. Right after Adolf Hitler came to power in January of 1933, within a month's time, one of the most famous buildings, government buildings in Germany, called the Reichstag, it burned to the ground. It was blamed on a Dutch communist by the name of van der Lubbe, Marinus van der Lubbe. In fact, in this article, I got it off the internet, and folk, I get things off the internet because it's quick and it's easy and I can get to material very rapidly. This material is all in the library. You can get any of this material. It's there if you dig deep enough, except maybe about the connection of the Illuminati to the Jesuit order. That takes a few other kinds of books. But this internet article, it's www.idd.assortment.com/Nazi Reichstag. It says this: on the night of February 27th, Berlin was rocked by a fire that blazed through the Reichstag building, the German House of Parliament. The building was gutted. Called out to watch the bonfire, Hitler exclaimed, "This is a God-given signal." He was delighted with what he saw. The very next day, Hitler met with von Hindenburg and pressured him into giving him dictatorial powers. The following day, Chancellor Hitler took the radical steps of denying all legal guarantees of personal liberty, freedom of speech, and the right of assembly by official decree. This step sent a shiver up many Berlin spines as the people saw the destroyed Reichstag building as a symbol of the death of German democracy. Blame for the fire was directed toward a Dutch communist by the name of Marinus van der Lubbe. Van der Lubbe was picked up in the Reichstag grounds while the blaze was still in progress. A case was built around him that placed the simple-minded Dutchman as the scapegoat of a sinister communist plot to destabilize the nation. However, the beneficial aspects of the destruction of the Reichstag building for the Nazis did not go unnoticed, and many people speculated that it was actually Chancellor Hitler who was the mastermind behind the plot. I couldn't disagree with that more. Adolf Hitler was not the mastermind behind the plot. It was the Jesuit order. It was Adolf Hitler's masters who were behind the burning of the Reichstag building. In 2001, in the very year that George Bush took office, the nation was struck by terrorists. One of the nation's most recognizable symbols, in this case, two towering, majestic buildings burned and then crashed to the ground. The World Trade Center, New York City, both towers, of course, fell. The pictures are riveted in our minds as we see Americans jumping from those buildings as they burned. In the aftermath of that horrendous tragedy on U.S. soil, like the Reichstag of 1933, it was blamed on terrorists. And of course, the terrorists were the Middle Easterners headed up by Osama bin Laden. There is no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever that van der Lubbe was a patsy, as is Osama bin Laden today. Point number 4, the leader declared it was a well-laid terrorist plot, that the perpetrators would be brought to justice. Number 5, the nation was not told that the people in charge of the investigation deleted critical information and rewrote investigative reports. The individuals did so to protect and cover up government involvement in this terrible deed. One man by the name of J. Toland, who wrote a book called Adolf Hitler, published by Doubleday out of New York in 1976. Mr. Toland states in his book that Hermann Göring, who was one of Hitler's right-hand people, in fact, he was Hitler's propagandist, rewrote investigative notes and records of the Reichstag fire in order to throw investigators off the scent and to implicate several individuals who had no part in the plot. And then from Dr. Joseph's books, America Betrayed, page 22, we read this: Colleen M. Rowley, FBI Division Legal Advisor for 12 years, accused FBI Director Mueller and the FBI of a cover-up for political reasons, and went on to note that other agents were accusing FBI headquarters of deliberate sabotage. That sabotage included deleting critical information and the rewriting of search warrants in order to prevent Minnesota FBI agents from uncovering the plot to attack the World Trade Center. In the aftermath of the tragedy, 1933 and 2001, the people were warned that the nation was in danger, that freedom itself was under assault, that terrorists were seeking to destroy it. In both cases, in Germany, as well as in the United States, in the aftermath of the Reichstag and the Twin Towers, February 28, 1933, an emergency decree was set up for the protection of the German people, which altered the Constitution and eliminated a number of civil rights. This law restricted demonstrations, freedom of speech, freedom of press, the sanctity of the home, security of mail and telephone, and authorized the confiscation of literature considered to be dangerous to the state. In 2002, Republican President George Bush asked Congress to pass several laws, such as the Patriot Act and the Homeland Security Bill, which would alter the Bill of Rights and give authorities the right to search homes and offices, wiretap phones, and open mail without the necessity of a search warrant. So the answer to the tragedy of 1933 was to attack liberty in Germany. And the answer to the terrorist attack in 2001 was to attack civil and religious liberty. Benjamin Franklin once made the comment where he said, anyone who would give up their liberties in order to be free and to feel safe and to be free deserves neither their liberties nor to feel safe and free. How terrorism can be stopped by giving up our liberties is something I have yet to figure out. The actuality of the case is that what has happened in both cases, an event is planned and executed with the specific goal of saying the only way to avoid this again and the fear that you feel is to surrender your liberty. There was a famous German philosopher in the early 1800s. His name was Hegel. And Hegel espoused a belief where he said, you have a thesis, you then create a conflict with an antithesis, and you have them come into combat together, and when they come into battle with each other, it will then produce the synthesis, or exactly what you want to have happen. And in Germany and in America, we see this Hegelian, or the teachings of Hegel, come into play. Hegel said, in essence, you want your goal is to destroy freedom. Okay? You have a nation that stands on civil and religious liberty. There's your thesis. So now you create something to be in conflict with that. And what they have created is, they've created a patsy. In Germany, it was communism. In America today, it's
Arab terrorism. And so you have them come into conflict. You have terrorism that hits this Republican government. And they come into conflict together, and it creates great fear in the country. And what is their goal? What is their synthesis? It's the destruction of American liberty. That's the Hegelian dialect. Synthesis, antithesis, and synthesis, your final goal. It happened twice. In Germany, it happened in America, it happened in Vietnam as well. Number 7, associates of the terrorists were rounded up and jailed without charge. Those who were suspicious were rounded up without charge, denied legal counsel. Most were never seen from again. That happened in Germany. It happened in America. There is no doubt, this is from www.geocities.com /Athens/Cyprus/7002/Third Reich. It says there is no doubt that the Nazis took advantage of the situation in order to proceed with their cause at the expense of civil rights and freedom of the German people. In the same night of the Reichstag fire, the Nazis used the opportunity to arrest 4,000 communists. Not only did the Nazis use the incident as a propaganda against communists, but they also arrested additional 40,000 members of the opposition. The Nazis had achieved their objective of eliminating democracy and ensuring their majority in the parliament. Now, if I replace just a few words there, like instead of Germany and Nazis and Reichstag, and I put in there Muslims/Americans, for Nazis I put in the Republicans in 2001. Folks, could you tell any difference between what happened in Germany and what happened in 2001? You couldn't tell any difference at all. After the 9/11 attack, from Dr. Joseph's book, America Betrayed, page 23, after the 9/11 attack, over 1,000 Muslim men, including at least 2 American citizens, were rounded up, jailed, and held without charge, without benefit of an attorney, and with no right to speak with relatives or friends. I'm not talking about Russia of the 1930s. I'm talking about America in the 21st century. Point number 8. The leader demanded that civil service laws be altered to give him power to hire only those of his choosing, to fire those who displeased him. This was necessary to protect the nation from terrorism. April 7, 1933, the law for the restoration of the professional civil service was passed. This law gave Hitler the authority to dismiss all politically unwanted persons from civil service jobs, including those in universities and libraries. The Homeland Security Bill provides George W. Bush with the same right, that is, the right to hire and fire security agents and personnel who would be denied civil service protection and whose loyalty would thus be to President Bush. Point number 9, the leader demanded the burning of books that opposed his regime. It's a well-known fact. Adolf Hitler had books throughout Germany burned that were opposed to his leadership and the rule of the Nazis. Dr. Joseph's book, again, this is on page 11. May 1933, the Nazis conducted book-burning campaigns throughout Germany. Tens of thousands of books which threatened the Nazi leadership and their ideology were burned by university students and professors. as well as SA troops who ransacked public libraries. And history tells us those who burn books burn people. But you say, Bill, that didn't happen in America. See that now your parallel stops, Bill. You're just missed it now. Well, 2001, James Hatfield, an American, wrote a book. It was called Fortunate Son. It was released by St. Martin's Press. Everything in the book had been gone over by St. Martin's Press attorneys and copy editors to make sure that everything in the book was completely legitimate and supportable. James Hatfield put the book out in the year 2000. 70,000 copies of the book Fortunate Son, which was a biography of George W. Bush, hit the stands. Within 72 hours, the book shot to number 8 on Amazon.com's top 100 list, and it was number 30 on the New York Times bestseller list. Shortly after it got to the top, it was a very damning book as far as George Bush getting into the White House. Shortly after it got to these top lists, the Dallas Morning News received confidential information on Hatfield's past, which was then trumpeted before the nation. As for the book itself, the people at St. Martin's Press announced they were going to withdraw his best-selling book and burn it. It would be turned into furnace fodder, they proclaimed. The burning of dangerous books had Nazi roots. And in fact, on July 20th, 2001, about a year after Hatfield's book came out, James Hatfield was found dead. Of what was considered to be suicide. Welcome to Nazi America, 2004. The leader ushered in a program which encouraged mail carriers, utility workers, and other governmental employees to spy on private citizens and report any suspicious behavior. Adolf Hitler did that in Germany. 2002, George Bush initiated the TIPS program, which created a national information sharing system for specific industry groups, such as water, electric, and gas meter readers, telephone repairmen, delivery drivers, postal workers, and so on, to report suspicious, publicly observable activity, including activity observed in private homes that could be related to terrorism. This reporting system is to be administered by the Department of Justice in coordination with several other federal agencies, including the Office of Homeland Security, the Department of Labor, the FBI, and FEMA. The TIPS program includes a centralized telephone hotline and web-based reporting system that automatically routes tips to appropriate federal, state, and local authorities. And last but not least, constitutional liberties were gutted in the aftermath of the tragedy. After the Reichstag fire, Hindenburg and Hitler invoked Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution, which permits the suspension of civil liberties in time of national emergency. This decree of the Reich for the protection of the people and state abrogates the following constitutional protections: free expression, freedom of the press, right of assembly and association, right to privacy of postal and electronic communications, protection against unlawful searches and seizures, individual property rights, and states' right of self-government. If I didn't know better, I would think that was talking about the new Patriot Act. Did you read what it said? Hitler and Hindenburg took away freedom of expression, free press, right of assembly, right to privacy of postal and electronic communications, protection against unlawful searches and seizures, individual property rights, and states' right of self-government. All of those were taken away in the aftermath of the Reichstag fire. And in the aftermath of September 11th, through the new Patriot Act, it suspended or curtailed a number of constitutionally guaranteed civil rights. Individuals can be arrested and detained without charge. Police powers are increased, enabling them to monitor telephone conversations, conduct secret searches with minimal judicial oversight. Private business records can be seized. American citizens can be spied upon. Even librarians can be ordered to provide police with lists of all books and reading materials checked out by a person of interest, even though there is no evidence of a crime. Would you say that our civil liberties are being threatened? Would you agree with me on that? Okay. If our civil liberties come under attack, does that mean that our religious liberty also is under attack? Is it? Okay. In the last 10 years, Oklahoma City was the work of terrorists. Okay? And in the aftermath of Oklahoma City, what was the solution? The solution was the anti-terrorism laws put through Congress by Bill Clinton, a man trained at Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit university. So in the aftermath of Oklahoma, the solution was an attack on civil and religious liberty. In the aftermath of 9/11, the solution was an attack on civil and religious liberty, right? In the last 10 years, the government of the United States is attacking liberty in this country right in our face. Now, there's people out there today that like to say that Ellen White wrote for the 19th century, was only talking about her time and the feeling of her time, which was anti-Catholicism. And folk, it's going on tape, on record, here we go. That is a bunch of baloney. Ellen White did not write for the 19th century. She wrote for us living at the end of time. And what she wrote is for us today. If you hear somebody say otherwise, folk, you either stand up and walk out the door, or you catch the guy as soon as the meeting is over and say, brother, you're wrong. And if you don't get with what Ellen White is saying, you're in a lot of trouble. She wrote a chapter in Great Controversy. It's called Liberty of conscience threatened. Now, to what time period is she writing that for? Right now. Is our liberty of conscience being threatened today? Yes, it is. Bill Clinton is threatening. He was threatening it. George Bush is threatening it. The Jesuit order that are the masters of those people are threatening the liberties of Americans and of Seventh-day Adventists. Now, I want to read a few statements from the chapter, Liberty of Conscience Threatened. And I want you to listen carefully as to who Ellen White pinpoints in this chapter and what she says. Listen, this is a statement, 565 of Great Controversy. It says, the Protestant churches are in great darkness, or they would discern the signs of the times. The Roman Church is far-reaching in her plans and modes of operation. She is employing every device to extend her influence and increase her power in preparation for a fierce and determined conflict to regain control of the world, to reestablish persecution, and to undo all that Protestantism has done. Did you hear, in what I just read, did you hear her mention Al-Qaeda? How many times did you hear her say Al-Qaeda? Was it 2 or 3? Erna, you must have not been listening. You didn't hear it. Well, how many times did you hear her say Osama bin Laden and the Muslim terrorists? How many times did you hear? Well, you know, what I'm going to do the next time we have a behind the door, I'm going to bring some swabs so we can get our ears cleared so you guys can hear. You're not hearing very well now. Folk, you know why she didn't mention Osama bin Laden and Muslims and Al-Qaeda? Because they're not the terrorists of today. She mentions in this chapter, Liberty of Conscience Threatened, who the terrorists of our day, who they are. Now, who did she mention there? She mentioned Rome. And did you notice what she said? She said, Rome is employing every device to extend her influence. Now, what does that mean? She is employing every device. What does the word every mean? It means Rome will use whatever is necessary to get what she wants. She wants liberty destroyed in this country. Ellen White says she will do anything to see it happen. You know what that anything means? It means that Rome will use bombs. Rome will use airplanes. Rome will use skyscraper buildings and have planes go into them and then implode them. Rome will use every device, she said, to further her own influence, to undo everything Protestantism has done. I would encourage you to go back and read Liberty of Conscience Threatened. Because I honestly believe if we don't understand what is really going on in our world, then folk, we are going to be blown away by it. We are going to embrace the lie, the deception. We're going to embrace it. And we're going to end up on the wrong side. This is light streaming down the darkness of time and saying, you who live at the end of time and you see liberty of conscience being threatened, this is the power behind it, right here. She is employing every device to extend her influence and increase her power in preparation for a fierce and determined conflict to regain control of the world, to reestablish persecution, and to undo all that Protestantism has done. Now I want to read the statement I read this morning. The people need to be aroused to resist the advances of this most dangerous foe to civil and religious liberty. You know, I have people that say to me, well, Bill, in your book, The Secret Terrorist and the Enemy Unmasked, you don't give a call for people to accept Christ. You know what, folks? We have the book Steps to Christ, don't we? And you know, if you went out and asked the 225 plus million people in this country if they were Christians, you know what they'd tell you? 90% would say, absolutely I am. So do those people need, if they think they're Christians and you hand them a book, Steps to Christ, which is a wonderful book, is that the book that is going to shake them up? Is it? They're going to look at the book and say, that's sweet. That's a nice book. And then they're going to throw it away. Because they already have come to Christ, right? You say, Bill, this is your propaganda for your books, huh? No, folk. You read what Ellen White said. The people need to be aroused to resist the advances of this most dangerous foe to civil and religious liberty. How are you going to arouse them? Steps to Christ? That's going to arouse a Christian? I'll tell you a book that will. You show them a picture of the United States in crosshairs. That'll arouse them. You show them a picture like that. That arouses people. That gets their attention. I believe, folk, it's time to start getting books and running from one house to another and putting a book on a doorstep and running to the next house. That's where I think we are. Because you know what? Time's running out. It's running out, folks. It's running out. The people need to be aroused to resist the advances of this most dangerous foe to civil and religious liberty. Great Controversy, page 580 in the same chapter. Marvelous in her shrewdness and cunning is the Roman Church. She can read what is to be. She bides her time, seeing that the Protestant churches are paying her homage in their acceptance of the false Sabbath, and that they are preparing to enforce it by the very means which she herself employed in bygone days. And folk, we sit here as Seventh-day Adventists and we say, phew, I'm glad she didn't say Seventh-day Adventists there. Well, you know what? You know how Seventh-day Adventist churches are coming under the persuasion of Rome? What did Rome tell its adherents through the Dark Ages? They said, it doesn't matter how bad it is in our church. This church, it's going through. This is the ship that's going through. This is God's church. Claire, that was going on all through the Dark Ages, wasn't it? Yeah. And so we in Adventism today who sit back and we say, oh, but I better stay in the church because it's going through, because it's God's church. You know what? That's the mentality of Rome. That's a Roman mentality. Do you realize that? Rome said, stay with the church, it's going through. And Seventh-day Adventists today are told, oh, but we've got to stay with the denomination because it's the ship that's going through. No, it's not.
The ship in the Dark Ages was not Rome. It was the Protestant Reformation. And the ship today that's going through is not the denomination. It's those who hold on to the truths that we have been given as a people. So Seventh-day Adventists are blinded today, not just Protestant churches. Protestant churches are paying homage to Rome by embracing Sunday worship. Seventh-day Adventists pay homage to Rome when they allow an apostate denomination to tell them how to follow God. That's insanity, folks. Those who reject the light of truth will yet seek the aid of this self-styled infallible power to exalt an institution that originated with her. The Roman Catholic Church, with all its ramifications throughout the world, forms one vast organization under the control and designed to serve the interests of the papal see. Oh, we don't understand that. Do you realize what Ellen White is saying? She is saying, folk, if somebody is a Roman Catholic or has sold their souls to Rome, they can put their hand on 1 million Bibles and claim loyalty to the Constitution of this country. Folk, that doesn't amount to anything. When George Bush takes his inaugural, soon again, and says, I vow loyalty to this country, folk, do you realize he vowed loyalty to the Jesuits of Rome in 1968, and that vow is paramount to every other oath? Do you realize that? That's called dual citizenship. And Rome, if you are a citizen of Rome, that citizenship supersedes everything else. Its millions of communicants in every country on the globe are instructed to hold themselves as bound in allegiance to the Pope. Whatever their nationality or their government, they are to regard the authority of the Church as above all other